The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. It's going to be a good show. I'm excited for this one. Lots of great stuff to talk about, some really important stuff going on in the music industry, and we're going to have a lot of fun keeping you all informed and empowered as indie creators, because that's what we do week in and week out without fail. Our guest coming up in the second segment, a favorite of the show, dare I say. Love it when she joins us. Blues singer-songwriter ZZ Ward is going to be here because she's got an album coming out, and that's where I want to be. Actually, I would say, frankly, feel a little honored, because as we record this, I believe ZZ Ward's new album, Liberation, is coming out like in 3 hours or so, like as we record this. So like we are the show that she wants to be on the eve of her cool new fourth album coming out. I'm honored. I'm excited. She's always a great interview. She's got so much great information. Is an expert at writing songs, but also developing her own career, doing some great stuff on the merch side. Excited to hear about a little bit more about her process, what she's got going on now. With her latest album, she's working with Sun Records, which means she's recording at the same place where Elvis Presley made all his records and where Johnny Cash made all his records. So that's going to be pretty cool to just hear some of those Sun Records stories. We got a lot to talk about. And thankfully, I'm not going to be having these conversations alone, because we got a fabulous co-host joining us. One of my favorite humans in this universe. Zach Sloan is here. Hey, Zach.
You were wrong, Ryan.
I'm sure I'm wrong about a lot of things.
Well, but her album does not come out in 3 hours. It comes out in 2 hours, 50 minutes, and about 15 seconds.
Oh,
I have the countdown going.
I'm sure you do. And I bet you've had that countdown going for like 3 straight months, just watching it tick on your phone, because as you told me before the show, you are incomparably excited about the new ZZ Ward album.
Dude,
you've been singing its praises.
The next, in 3 hours, the new ZZ Ward album drops and the new Coheed and Cambria album drops. And those are 2 records I've been excited about since the announcement of their releases. So I'm going to be sleepy tomorrow morning at work because I'm staying up listening to records.
One of my favorite things about you when it comes to Break the Business Act, and this is something I've heard from folks who've listened to this show who appreciate what you do. One of my favorite things is just like how into the interviews you get. When you join us for interviews, you're always a fan of the guest. You always do your homework. You learn things about the guest. You relate to them musician to musician. You talk guitar picks with our guests and things like that. And I just love it. Yeah, we're going to bring it up every single time. But you're a fan of these people, and you bring that love into the interviews, and it's contagious. Like, the viewers and listeners love that about you, and I feel like with ZZ Ward, you're taking it to a whole new level because you really, really like her music.
If you haven't listened to her, the record's coming out, but her most recent single, Naked in the Jungle, like, as a lover of all things slide guitar, like I have a keep guitar slide at my desk, that single has been exciting me for a while, and just she is unbelievably talented, and I'm very excited to get to talk to her. And in fact, Ryan, as I pieced together, I became a fan of hers when she was a guest on the show 2 years ago or so. So I'm stoked.
Yes, and she's done a lot and accomplished a lot, even in the brief period in which she was last on the show. It's been about a year or two, but she's had another child and has mined that child for a great deal of amazing songwriting. Got a new tour, new album, and excited to hear about where she is on that journey. That's going to be an absolute blast. I implore our viewers and listeners, don't go anywhere for any of that. Before we bring her in, Zach, I want to talk to you about just a couple news stories that have been on my mind all week, starting with one that just, I would say, is kind of annoying me. It's something of a thorn in my side, both as a entertainment lawyer, as somebody who's looking out for musicians, and just somebody who is generally not very happy with the current state of everything in our country right now. And certainly I could go to a lot of Americans right now and say, like, what is currently bothering you about what the president is doing or what's going on with our government? And I'd get a lot of answers, and they're all very, very big answers. Like, I mean, everybody's got, like, there are a lot of big problems in this country. And I'm going to bring up something that the Trump administration is doing and that the government is doing that, admittedly, look, I say this on the front end, okay? Not the biggest problem going right now, all right? This isn't what's happening in Ukraine. This isn't, trying to annex Canada or anything like that, okay? Admittedly, this is a small problem, but it is something that is just annoying to me in terms of my day-to-day life and the effect it's having on indie artists. And that is the Corporate Transparency Act and the current state of it. Because even though, again, it's not the biggest problem we have right now at all, it is something that is becoming an increasing problem to a lot of independent artists. A lot of independent artists have companies, LLCs and corporations that they use to operate their music careers, including one Zach Sloan who just raised his hand. And in theory, we have a law on the books that now has given us a deadline of March 21st that you have to file a report with the federal government's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network called a Beneficial Ownership Information Report. You have to tell this sector of the federal government who owns your company. If you are the only owner of your company as a entertainment industry professional, it's a very easy report to fill out. You can do it in less than 5 minutes, maybe even less than 2 minutes if you can type really, really fast. But it is a report. It is required under the law. You could theoretically face significant penalties if you do not complete this filing. And it is, and now that we've gone through a few court injunctions on it, there is a deadline of March 21st to complete this filing. That is a hard deadline. In fact, if you go on the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network's website, boi.fincen.gov, you can look, and there's a big, scary red banner at the top of the webpage that says, you got to file this thing by March 21st. And so, like, if you look at that, everything about that says, oh, I better file. Except on March 2nd, there was a press release by the Treasury Department of the Trump administration where they just said, yeah, don't worry about that. You don't need to file. And okay, that's fine. Like, if we are not going to enforce that particular law, there is a process for not enforcing laws, right? You create rules. You set up like the administrative procedure for it. You require that same branch, that same agency of the government that's telling you in a bright red banner on its website that you have to file, make them put up another bright red banner that says, just kidding, you don't have to file. And I know people are going to say, well, but the Trump administration says I don't have to file. Yeah, a press release is not law. A press release is not a regulation. A tweet is not a regulation. Like, if you're saying that this law is not going to be enforced, you need formal rulemaking. Because if not, me as the entertainment lawyer who's advising my clients who are saying, Ryan, what do? I'm freaking out. This thing says I have to file, but then a press release says I doesn't have to file. I have to tell them it's not clear. And so err on the side of caution and file, because it's not that hard to do. But why does everything have to be so stupid with all of this? Just follow the procedure. If you're not going to enforce a law, do the things that you're supposed to do to officially not enforce the law. Don't put the law in limbo. Don't say one thing in a press release and then the agency saying something completely different on their website, because a lot of artists don't know what to do. And me advising them, I'm not sure what to do. And that's not a great place for any of us to be in.
Let me ask you, because this impacts a lot of us. Is there a filing fee? Is there any type of, do you got to pay $5 to do this?
ZERO dollars.
I don't know if that makes it better or confuses me more. But the frustration I have with that is exactly the same that you do. But mine just is from the artist perspective, right? You're advising your clients. And as an artist, I'm thinking of, well, I have an LLC. My wife has an LLC. Do we do this? Do we not? And one thing I've learned, Ryan, is that, as you so eloquently said, the internet is not the law. And that breaks my heart. because it would be so much more fun if it was.
I mean, certainly the president of the United States would love for X posts and Truth Social posts and press releases with varying degrees of caps lock being used is the same thing as federal policy.
The more caps lock, the more binding.
Yes, exactly. I believe there was a Supreme Court case that makes that point clear. And so that's, I mean, because I'm sure he'd love that, because that's a lot more fun than doing the actual stuff under the Administrative Procedure Act that is required to make actual regulations. But in this limbo that we're in this state of uncertainty, my advice is going to be file, because why not err on the side of caution? It's easy to do. It's quick to do. And even though President Trump might not enforce the law, the next person might. And the president might change his mind. He might wake up on the different side of the golden bed and decide that he's going to start enforcing this law and issue a press release saying he's going to enforce it. Like there's no predictability here. So in the absence of a logical rule that's been put out to follow, like you might as well just follow what the actual federal law says, which is you have to file, and comply with what the federal judge says, which is that you have to file by March 21st.
Are you saying that it's possible that maybe, say, on March 22nd, that Trump could just reverse course and say, yeah, you had to file?
I mean, would it be...
I guess that has as much legal as legal information in it as him saying you don't have to without any actual steps being taken.
Yeah. I mean, would it, like, let's say on March 22nd, he puts out like a post on Truth Social saying, just kidding, anybody who has not filed their report, I am hitting them with a fine. I am locking them up. I'm going to go to houses and throw people in jail. Would that even rank among the 100 most insane things that has happened since he's been inaugurated?
Oh, no.
Like, that would just be a Tuesday. Like, look at how many times he's gone back and forth on tariffing Canada in the last 14 days, and tell me that it would be crazy for him to completely change his mind about this Corporate Transparency Act thing.
Okay. Never mind. I'm going to take the high road here, Ryan, and I'm not going to resort to just saying crazy stuff. So what I'm hearing is that we should all just do the filing. It shouldn't take too long. And hope for the best. Is that what I'm hearing? That we should just hope from the best from the federal government? Sweet.
I mean, yeah, no, like, and clearly they've inspired a lot of confidence that you can hope for the best with them. So I don't see what the problem is.
Great. Our federal government's Spotify now. That's lovely.
Yes. Let us now shift from the public sector driving us absolutely bonkers to the private sector driving us absolutely bonkers, specifically streaming services. One of my new favorite annual traditions, Zach Sloan, I look forward to it much as I look forward to the Super Bowl or the Grammys every year, is the spectacular annual release of Spotify's Loud and Clear report. They've been putting out these reports annually that basically try to use a lot of ambiguous language, a lot of vague statements to make it sound like they are just showering indie artists with money. Like they are just, it's like, they're taking every artist and putting them in that giant glass booth at like a Chuck E. Cheese or a Discovery Zone that just has like a lot of money flying around in it. And they're just doing that for every artist because they're just so dang charitable. It's a very long report, and they put in a lot of statistics saying, here's how much we're paying artists. Here's how much more they're making than last year. And it's meant as sort of a PR tool. It's meant to make us try to hate Spotify 5% less. And I think it's important for us to read this report to, get a few laughs out of it. But most importantly, to, read it with a critical lens and understand why they're saying what they're saying and why maybe what they're saying should be taken with a grain of salt. And most importantly, why this report should inspire us to sponsor and support certain kinds of public policy that might actually allow these streaming services to be better payors to independent artists, to actually create a music industry where more indie creators can make a living and use streaming services as the vehicle to make that happen. And so let's talk about this report, because I know you've read it too, Zach, and I'm sure you got your laughs out of it. And as much as we're sort of ripping on Spotify, let me give them credit on one thing, all right? Credit where credit's due. Though I'm not particularly happy with a lot of what is in this report, I will at least credit them for the fact that they're actually putting a report like this out, because I think they're the only streaming service that is actually providing any kind of numbers and any kind of statistics with this amount of detail about how they're paying artists. You're not seeing this from Tidal. You're not seeing this from Apple Music. Like, Spotify is at least trying to give us numbers. We can quibble with those numbers, but at least we have numbers to quibble over. So I'm giving them that, all right? And one of those numbers that they're opening up with right in the beginning to try to make you go, man, those Spotify people are just so darn charitable, is they noted that in 2024, they have paid over $10 billion in payouts to rights holders, which is the most of any streaming service. And they're always quick to mention that. And in fact, in every single Spotify Loud and Clear report, they're always quick to say that. We are paying more in payments to rights holders. We're paying more royalties to music rights holders, to artists, than any other streaming service. But that's kind of a rhetorical trick that they're doing. And there's a lot of rhetorical tricks in this article, but that's a pretty big one, because they're paying the most money to rights holders than any other streaming service, but they're also the largest streaming service. So of course they're going to pay them more money than any other streaming service. That would be like, and I've used this example in previous years when we've gone over this report, as if McDonald's were to say, we've paid out the most money in salary to fast food employees than any other fast food chain. Yes, that's true, but that's because McDonald's is the largest fast food chain. It doesn't mean they're paying their employees particularly well. And so Spotify is paying more than any other service, but that's because it's the biggest provider. It doesn't mean that it's paying its artists well. Right. I got a lot more things to yell at them about, but let me give you a shot here, Zach.
Well,
what were your takeaways from this?
So I actually was talking to a friend of mine about this today, because I pal around with some musicians, as you might suspect. And one thing that my buddy said that I thought is echoing basically what you're saying is volume does not equal generosity, right? Okay, so you read their report and they trumpet this stuff, but did you ever see them break it down percentage-wise, Ryan? Did you ever have them compare themselves percentage-wise to another provider? Because I didn't see that. And I think that is a better tool than the sheer volume. Another thing that struck me as odd is the little tidbit in there about how, you have most of your fans are going to be from overseas, and so many artists, most of their fans, thousands of dollars come from overseas. And I was like, how much of that is botting? Like, how much of those are real people? How much of that is actual legit? How are they actually tracking that? It makes my head hurt, Ryan, because I yell at Spotify all the time, and they don't listen to me. They don't.
Well, the other thing that Spotify, so one thing that we can accuse Spotify of doing over and over in this report is comparing themselves to things that are obviously going to be smaller in size, so that it makes them look bigger. It makes it look like they're doing more than they're actually doing, right? So by Spotify comparing their overall payouts to streaming services that are smaller than they are, it looks like they are paying lots of money to artists. Right. When if you actually did that on a percentage basis or a per artist basis, it's not very much money. The other way that Spotify kind of does this same trick is by comparing how much they're paying now to how much they paid 10 years ago. And they do that trick a lot. But the problem with that is streaming is a lot bigger as a platform now than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, streaming was about as big as downloading. It was about 30%, I think, of the overall global music revenue. And today it's more than twice that amount. So yeah, you're going to make more on, Spotify is going to pay out more now on streaming than it did 10 years ago. But here's their version of that statistic that they were quick to trumpet. They said 10 years ago, the 10,000th ranked artist on Spotify generated $34,000 on the platform. Today, that same artist, that same 10,000th, not the same artist, but whoever the 10,000th ranked artist is on Spotify now, is generating $131,000 on the platform. So about 4 times as much. And you look at that and you go, oh, wow. So I guess that it means that generally people are making 4 times as much than they were 10 years ago. Well, even if that's true, 10 years ago, the streaming services were less than half their size. So yeah, you're going to make more money now on that platform than you would have 10 years ago. So you can't, that's not really a fair comparison. The Guardian actually did a really cool analysis on this where they evaluated that claim and, getting to percentages, Zach, since you're such a big percentage guy, and said, okay, you're right. The 10,000th ranked artist on Spotify is generating $131,000. But there are only about 225,000 artists on the platform that you would consider emerging or professional recording acts, right? There's 11 million people who submit music to Spotify. Most of them are just people who aren't really trying to make a go at this as creators. But if you just take the ones that are really trying to do something in music, there are 225,000 of those on Spotify, which means that of that group that's actually trying to make a real living in music, only 4% of those acts are generating that $131,000 on the platform. So 96% aren't making any kind of like professional middle class-ish living from Spotify royalties. And by the way, like when Spotify says it's generating $131,000 for the 10,000th ranked artist, that's not $131,000 going into that artist's pocket, right? Some of that's going to your distributor. If you're signed to a label, most of that's going to your label. If you're in a 4-person band, that's getting split among your 4 band members. If you have a producer, the producer's maybe getting 15% of that. So you're not getting a check for $131,000 from Spotify. It's probably less than that, maybe half of that or even a third of that. But again, that's only 4% of the acts on Spotify who are actually trying to make a go at having a music career. So, you said we got to look at the percentages, Zach. I looked at the percentages there. They don't look good for Spotify.
Well, and another thing is I'm looking through some of this as we're going. I'm eyeballing this, but it looks like less than 1% of these 250,000 artists are making $1 million, which I realize is that's a weird line to draw, but $1 million I can conceptualize. The other thing that you said that is striking me about this is when we're talking about this money getting paid out, the Spotify report does not differentiate the royalty rates that major labels have compared to like what I have, because I'm an indie artist, and how the royalty rate is different for them. Therefore, maybe they're getting paid more. I suspect they are. But they're also, the labels are taking the vast majority of that. So of this money that is supposedly going to the artist, it's not all even going to the artists, right? Like the lion's share of this for the big acts is going to their record company, would be my guess. Am I assessing this correct, Ryan?
You are assessing this correctly as far as any of us can know, right? Because as you just noted, there's a huge transparency problem here. What we know for sure, 99% sure, is that Spotify is paying a different per stream amount to Universal Music than they're paying to Zach Sloan. I mean, Universal recently struck a deal with Spotify where they basically worked out a new royalty arrangement just for Universal, the terms of which have not been made public, speaking of lack of transparency here. But it's commonly understood throughout the industry that, Spotify is getting a preferential rate. The major labels are getting a preferential rate versus the rest of us. And so every dollar, and that matters because every dollar that goes to Universal, that is a dollar that doesn't go to indie artists. So I think we need to see transparency here, and I'd like to potentially see some legislation that requires that every song that gets played on Spotify gets paid the same. You shouldn't get less of a payment on Spotify because you're signed, if you're self-labeled versus if you're a Universal artist. That's not fair.
Well, and I mean, it's not fair in two respects. I mean, we've gone over the record companies and what happens there, but also, I mean, the other thing that I'm noticing from this is Spotify still isn't looking at like the SoundCloud model, right? Which is like you've advocated for forever, right? Where it's
user-centric royalties.
User-centric. That's why, there we go. I was like fan-centric, user-centric royalty rates, where this just sort of glosses over all of that by saying, look at the money we throw. It's great. No, that's not really, that throwing all the money doesn't mean it's going to people who actually deserve it.
No.
Don't get me wrong. Not that Drake doesn't deserve all of his, oh wait, never mind.
Since we're talking about policy, and we got policy on the brain here. We spent the first 6 minutes of this show talking about how we'd like to see some policy that would create some clarity for artists as to whether or not they need to file for their beneficial ownership information reports under the Corporate Transparency Act. Here's another policy that I would advise that gets adopted to try to address some of these problems here that Spotify is indirectly highlighting, because they're trying to make it sound like they're paying artists a lot of money, but they're not. And we don't need Spotify to tell us that. We can just talk to the average artist on Spotify who's getting tiny, tiny payouts. And so we need to fix that model. And I don't think that there's any private sector fix. I don't think there's any way for Spotify to change their model and just get artists paid more. I think we need a government solution here. And I got to say, Zach, I've been pretty interested in a bill that is floating through Congress right now by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib out in Michigan, who has a potential solution to this. Let me make sure I get the title of this right. The Living Wage for Musicians Act. What this law would do is it would place a small tax on music streaming service subscriptions. It would effectively tax the folks who are using Spotify. It would tax these streaming services. And the funds for that tax, from that tax, would go to a nonprofit fund similar to Sound Exchange that would then pay money directly to artists in proportion to their monthly stream, an additional revenue stream for artists, because that means more money in artists' pockets. And what I like about this proposal from Congresswoman Tlaib, and I'm actually put out a guest request to her office to see if we can get her on the show to talk about it some more, is it would operate the same way as Sound Exchange does, in that it would facilitate payments to artists directly. In other words, it doesn't go through the label. It doesn't go through any third-party company. It goes right into the artist's pocket. It is a special kind of income that goes directly right to the artist. For the people who need to get caught up on this, the way Sound Exchange works. So Sound Exchange is a nonprofit royalty service that is used for collecting and paying out royalties when music is played on internet radio type stations or satellite radio such as Sirius XM. When songs are played on Sirius XM satellite radio, royalties go into the Sound Exchange, and artists get paid directly based on how much their music is paid on those internet radio platforms. And it's a direct payment to the artists. If you try to go into Sound Exchange as a record label and say, hey, I'm that featured artist's label, I get paid, Sound Exchange says, no, we don't pay labels, we pay artists directly. So the idea of a Sound Exchange type fund, but for when music is played on streaming services, sounds like a pretty cool way for artists to get a direct revenue stream and to actually get paid more from the streaming services. I'm pretty excited about legislation like this.
I love this idea. I love anything that will make sure that artists are actually getting paid. And I love something that is, as we've talked about, transparent, so that you know precisely what you're getting, and so that artists can budget a little bit, right? I can't imagine trying to, if streaming is your main source of income, which for most artists it's not, but let's just assume here that for an artist it is. How do you budget? How do you know what you're going to be making? It's really not possible. Whereas with this, adding something that you get paid directly with a set amount of tax being used per stream, Ryan, that makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. What do you anticipate is going to be the big pushback to this?
I mean, the big pushback to this is going to be, for one thing, the big pushback is the legislation's being sponsored by a member of the minority party in the House of Representatives. So it has 5 co-sponsors, all Democrats, right? So this isn't something that's particularly being prioritized in the current government, mainly because it doesn't involve annexing Greenland. And so that's the one pushback. The second pushback is I think there's a lot of folks who are just generally anti-tax, even if it's a tax on, something that's going to be generally a good thing, which is helping lift more musicians out of poverty. I think, just some people are just generally anti-tax in all of its forms and shapes and sizes, and that's going to, create pushback as well. But I'm hoping this is something where, it's not going to happen in this Congress, but when people like Congresswoman Tlaib bring it up, it starts making its way into the policy discussion. It starts to gain more supporters, maybe 2 or 3 Congresses from now, when we get a more favorable government environment. it might be something that gets put on the front burner and actually has a chance of becoming law.
All right. So what I'm hearing is when I'm approaching Social Security age, I can look at streaming as a potential way to, make some money. That's great.
Well, I mean, you'll need that because you won't have the Social Security. So
Set and spike. That was a good
think
joke,
of this
Ryan.
as your Social Security payment. So when the Social Security Trust Fund dries up just in time for Zach Sloan to retire, don't worry because your Congresswoman Tlaib royalties are going to be coming right into your bank account just to make up that shortfall. I mean,
Oh my God.
Between that and your teacher's pension, you'll be fine.
Dude, I'm just going to listen to some ZZ Ward records and go to sleep. I can't do this anymore.
Oh, well, let's all get made much happier by talking to her. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to have ZZ Ward joining us here on Break the Business. Don't go anywhere. Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to Break the Business, everybody. Ryan Kairalla here with Zach Sloan. You're bopping to that song. You like that song?
No, I'm listening to ZZ Ward in the background.
Oh, that's fine. Nobody blames you. I feel like we threw out a lot of bad news in that first segment, a lot of depressing stuff. And I'm often criticized on this show for just kind of bringing the doom each week. And I don't want to do that. I want to bring some happy news. First of all, we can bring the happiness of just letting everybody know how much we very much appreciate your support here on Break the Business, and thank all of you for checking us out wherever you check us out, whether it's SiriusXM 145 or volume.com or the podcasting platforms or Twitch or wherever. Thank you. Mwah. We love you for it. But here's a piece of good news for you, Zach, on top of all of that, is I just read that Blue Sky is allowing 3-minute videos on its platform for the first time, which is a long overdue addition, right? If Blue Sky is going to become the X alternative that we are all hoping it is, and it's getting more and more users all the time, it's got to get some of these features, right? I think 3-minute videos is an important one. It's definitely an important one for this podcast, because I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to post a clip from this show on Blue Sky, and I can't get a clip that's less than 60 seconds because God knows Ryan Kairalla's never been able to make a point on this show in under 60 seconds. He needs the full 3 minutes, and so thank God we finally have it. So it's great for the show, but also great for creators in general. I think you're going to be able to do a lot more cool stuff on Blue Sky now that you have that new feature.
So, Ryan, did you notice you got a new follow on Blue Sky?
Is that right? Oh, just now?
I read, so you sent me this article and I read it and I thought, you know what? This is actually like an artist-friendly enough move. I may never actually use Blue Sky. I still hold on to my title that you gave me as the nicest follow on Twitter. But I signed up for Blue Sky and followed you because I think this is a cool addition. There it is.
There it is. Well, shoot. If Zach Sloan is following me on Blue Sky now, I'm actually going to have to start doing stuff on Blue Sky again because I can't.
This is good for artists. Also, as I was just messing with Blue Sky, the ability to control your feed and mute and stop people from being obnoxious. Blue Sky is pretty great. It looks like a lot of fun.
I like it a lot. It reminds me a lot of 2015 Twitter. in terms of just how friendly it is, the vibe, the, fairly significant lack of Nazis. Like, that's all. It's a welcome development. I treasure that particular platform. Going to bring out our guest this week.
Her voice hits like thunder, rolling in the night. With a mission, lighting up the mic. Bringing raw and real from her soul to her song. We've been waiting for this moment all week long. ZZ Ward's in the house, breaking down the scene, riding every rhythm, making life a dream. From the heart she sings, where the blues collide. Let her voice ignite and take us for a ride.
Our guest this week is an acclaimed LA-based blues singer-songwriter whose fourth studio album, Liberation, drops on March 14th. Our guest is touring the U.S. throughout March and April, and you can find out more about our guest's work by visiting zzward.com. We are happy to welcome back ZZ Ward on A Break the Business. Hi there.
That was so cool. Like, I wasn't expecting that. You guys, like, there's a song that was written about me?
Producer Lauren always gets upset when we have the longer intro songs for the artist. She's always like, get in, get out. Don't make them these like epic things. But I mean, that one just made me smile. That was a fun. Oh, there it goes again. Yeah, we're gonna get a little bit more of that. It just keeps on playing. But
Awesome.
it puts guests in a good mood, right? You're feeling it now.
How could that not put me in a good mood? That's the best. That might be like the peak interview moment I've ever had, where someone wrote a song about me to start the interview.
ZZ, it's the least we could do, because you could have made your way onto so many podcasts on the eve of your new album release. I know everybody wants a piece of you right now, and you're here on Break the Business as I knock my microphone.
Just
You're
over
right,
2
you're right,
hours
here.
before your album is released.
No, it's wild.
We're over the moon for you, ZZ. Zach Sloan has,
Thank you.
we love the album. Zach Sloan has not shut up about how much he's been digging your music this whole time. He's probably got a billion music questions for you.
Guitar
But
pick.
Awesome.
let me, probably about guitar picks. No, she's into hats. You got to ask her hat questions, Zach Sloan. So last time we had you on the show, ZZ, was back in August of 2023. And since that time, you have brought your second baby into the world. Congratulations. 2 little boys. And as the parent of 1 little boy, I have to ask, is there anything in your house that is not broken?
Yeah. It's crazy, but I'm lucky because I feel like I moved when I was pregnant with my first son. So when I was like setting up my house, I was like, I don't want anything that I have to be like, get off of that. So pretty much everything except some like white couches that we like inherited, which I do say like, get off of that, is like kind of fair game. Like I have like, like these couches that are just like, really rough. Like you could just throw up all over them, and they just send them to the dry
White
cleaner.
couches with 2 boys. You're just digging your own grave there, CC.
Well, I know, but someone offered them to me and they were so nice. I was like, yeah, I'll take them. But they give me anxiety. I kind of wish I said no, because every time they walk on them, I'm like, no.
Between who you are and who the daddy is here, I already know those are going to be some insanely musically talented babies. So is there any way I can invest in them now? Like, can I sign them to something sight unseen? Like, I want to get in on the ground floor of whatever these kids are going to be musically capable of, because it's going to be something spectacular.
Yes, we get stock in these people now.
Yeah, it's funny because like, I mean, they're so exposed to music like all the time, and like Evan is like such a good mentor too. So at some point, I think they'll be like really lucky to have him if they want to go into music or anything like that. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't want to like put my stuff on them. Like, I'm like, if you guys want to play music, cool. But if they don't, like, want to go do something else, like, my son's really interested in music though. Like he's, he wants to play the drums. He really likes the drums.
How could he not be? God, that's going to be a fun house, a noisy house, but a fun house.
Yes.
Motherhood is a main theme of your new album, Liberation, which is coming out. And when's the countdown say, Zach Salone?
Let me pull it up. I've got it here. We've got 2 hours, 12 minutes and 59 seconds.
There you go. Of your new album, Liberation, which you have characterized as a motherhood theme blues album. And as the parent of a toddler, I can just say, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. That should be a rich source of blues music material. What inspired that for you?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go further into the blues and soul on this album. I knew I wanted to do it for a long time. I didn't know what the subject matter was going to be about. But it just kind of happened naturally. Like I wrote Love Alive was the first song that I wrote for the album. And that was kind of talking about how like when you have kids, like suddenly you think your relationship is like, you're like, I got this down with your partner. Then you have kids and it changes your relationship. And there's like, and there's no way you can, like, I feel naive. Like I was so naive thinking like, oh, well, this won't affect us at all. Like it changes things. And so I wrote that song, and then that kind of just opened it up for me to want to talk about kind of what was going on in my life more. And I remember going to, a couple people close to me, like Evan and Ryan, who produced the album, Ryan Spraker, and just being like, I'd start to write the songs and I'd be like, is this cool that I'm talking about like mom stuff, And like they were super supportive and encouraging. And they were like, yeah, like you should tell your story, don't be scared of like how many people that relates to. You just have to write your own story. And so I did.
Okay, I promise that I'm not going to ask you any how do you find the time to balance music and being a mom questions, because you don't need to hear that question from two dudes interviewing you. And you're probably getting that question way too much now. But I want to phrase a modified version of that question, because I think this would be interesting, is how much do you involve your kids in the process of what you're doing right now? Because I imagine that it would be really valuable for these boys to see their mom doing awesome things in music.
Yeah, I love that question. I involve them so much. I think that for me, my kids are first. My relationship with my boys is first. Everything else is secondary. And so I really they're on the road with me right now. It's like I try to bring them everywhere I go with the music, and except for the studio to like record the album or something. But like they come on the road with me. They're in every green room. They're on every stage. And yeah, that's just important to me, to bring them with me and to show them that like you can do whatever you want in this world and just like follow your dreams. And even if it's unconventional and like not the normal thing, like you should just go for it. And, the rules change all the time. So hopefully they learn stuff from being out here on the road, and it's working for now. So.
Well, and sort of as you've talked about, like you're putting together this new record, you're traveling with your family. Like, how do you balance authenticity and like who you are and what you want to work on and present, and like the industry expectations of like, we need a pop hit, we need this, we need that. Yeah. You clearly don't really seem to care. You seem to be doing like what you want. How have you done that over the course of your career?
I mean, it's different now than it was. I think that I felt more pressure to do that at a different time in my career. I'm not really at that place in my career anymore. I think that, and it's so freeing. And that's a lot of what this album is about and why it's called Liberation, is because it's just, finally, I felt like I was at this place where it was like, I wasn't trying to make music for somebody outside of myself. I made this album because I loved what it sounded like. And when I listen back to it, I'm so proud of it, And so, and especially with having kids and stuff, I don't think that I could be in that other place. And thankfully I'm not, because I mean, some artists are still, but I'm not really in that place anymore.
Is that a result of you being the strong enough person to like, you've made your records, and like the evolution of your records is really cool. Like, please, more slide guitar. I love it. It's especially on like Naked in the Jungle, that stuff's crushing it. But like the evolution of your music has changed so much, but still been in the ballpark of your blues oriented sort of history. How do you continue to change and evolve without like losing fans along the way?
Yeah, it's tricky. I might lose some fans along the way. I think that, but if I was trying to please everybody, then I think you lose more fans, because it has to be authentic to you. And it's an interesting question because going further into the blues and soul, it's like I will have a couple people come to my shows that are just like, "Oh my gosh, like the mixtape you put out before Till the Casket Drops, like just last night, like that's my favorite thing ever," you know? And I don't know what they think of this new album, but like, because it's more blues, you know, and there's no hip hop beats or anything like that. But it's like, again, like I'm not at that place. That's not what I want to do right now. So I just have to do me. I have to do what works for me and what makes me happy and feel good about the music, and the rest will fall into place, you know?
Do you think you'll stay with the blues, or are you going to hop around some more on future projects?
I think that I'll probably stay with the blues. I think for me, I really found like my sweet spot of like what feels good for me. But when we talk about the blues, I think there's different types of blues artists. And for me, um, I know what traditional blues sounds like. And there are times when I want to sing traditional blues, and then there are times where I want to push the envelope a little bit, whether it be with the lyrics or the form of the song. So I think I can have enough fun kind of keeping it in that place and still allowing myself to expand and not get like bored. Um, so I think I'll be sticking with the blues. Yeah.
And in that vein, I love the role that you are now playing and taking in the greater history of the music industry simply by having three letters on appearing on your album, SUN. Being a part of Sun Records imprint, being a part of that history, being on the same label now as Elvis, as Johnny Cash, as Carl Perkins, what does that mean to you and to your development as an artist and like of the philosophy of this record?
It's really special. I think it goes to kind of emphasize some of the things that we were talking about, which is like, for me at this point in my career to like have been on a major label and then be independent. And when I first went independent, I was like, how do I do this? I don't even know how to do this anymore. We turned around from the pandemic and like everything had changed. I had a kid. I was like, suddenly I didn't have a label. I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And I was like, we left in the middle of a tour and went into lockdown. So like, it was just like this abrupt change. And then, you figure out how to do it. And so I started Dirty Shine Records, which is my label. And then I decided I wanted to go make Liberation. I just went in and made it. Me and Ryan made the album. And then I got wind that Sun Records was interested. And I was like, what? Sun Records? Like, the Sun Records? Are they still around? Like, what? And which is was my first thought. And they were like, yeah, they're relaunching the label. And I was like, oh my God, that is really, really cool and nostalgic. And I love that. Like, for me, it's not about it being the biggest thing or having a pop hit. Like, I don't know. I just like that would be cool, but that's not what it is for me. I think that being with Sun is like, I grew up listening to all of those artists, and those artists were like the real deal artists. Like those, I'm like so inspired by those artists, and to be part of the new face of that is such an honor, you know.
So where are you now in terms of your business mindset, in terms of future projects? Like, do you consider yourself an indie artist still? Like you're going to put future releases out on Dirty Shine, or are you thinking I'm kind of going back into the label waters, maybe do more releases with Sun, maybe look at a major label again? Where do you see yourself headed based on the overall trends of the industry right now?
I think that the best thing that I can do is to keep my music out there and keep having the opportunities to write it, make albums, tour, whatever I need to do to make that happen. I'll do. So it just depends. But I am very like, I'm very critical of having the right team around me. I think that like I have to have a team of people around me that's like super passionate about the music, because I just don't, I've been in situations before where it maybe is something else. And it's just it just sucks the life right out of you. So the team is the most important thing to me, not so much the title,
Okay, so Zizi, I got to ask you this as a songwriter myself who's hit a bit of a creative block. What do you do when you're hitting writer's block? How do you get through it? Has that changed since you've added another child to your household?
Yeah. Writer's block is like, it's interesting, right? Like, I think that like the thing is like you just have to live life, and like things happen in life and then you want to write about it, you know. At least that's how it is for me. Like I've definitely had periods of time in my life where I'm trying to write from experiences that are like older. I'm trying to draw from things like, you know, things, heartbreaks that happened years ago, or, you know, somebody else's relationship. Like Cannonball was written about, you know, somebody else's relationship. Someone was telling me about the troubles in their relationship. And so I started writing about that. I think you just have to find the inspiration, you know, whether it's from inside of you or around you. That's the biggest thing that can move that needle. I think it's when you don't feel inspired, or like go listen to other music, because there's so much music out there that will just like start, you know, getting all those, you know, things just working inside of you. It's the moment you just sit there in silence, you're like, oh, it just all has to come out of me. That's hard, I think.
Well, and your music is like so vivid and raw and emotional. Like, what is your overall process like? It sounds like you're drawing on your life experiences. How are you getting from that to the pen to the page? And specifically, are you a lyrics first person? Are you a melody first? Are you a chord structure first? How do you do it?
I'm I'm a chord structure person first. Like I have to have a chord structure to write over for me mostly. Like I know everybody does it different ways, and I can do it anyway. Like you know, I think creativity is my biggest gift. Like I love figuring out different ways of doing the same thing. But I think but like if you're asking me the one way that it usually works, I'd say a chord structure, melody, and then lyrics. Because for me, I think the tone of someone's voice or the sounds that come out of their mouth are more primitive than language. That's just how I feel about it. So I can hear somebody sing without any lyrics and feel emotionally moved by that. And so I usually try to let that dictate what I'm going to write about.
Well, another dimension of this, Zach, is the fact that she's part of a songwriting couple, right? I've worked with clients who, you know, both people in either the marriage or the relationship are both songwriters, and I've had some where they say we write all of our songs together, and I've had some where they go we never write songs together. That would be too weird. You know, I do my thing, he or she does their thing, and never the two meet. How does it work in your relationship?
Um, It's different at different times. I mean, Evan and I have written songs together. Like we wrote Ride, that was in the Cars 3 movie, and Gary Clark Jr. is on. We wrote that song together. And then he's written, you'll see him on different songs on my albums that he's written on. But for the most part, the way that it works is like, um, you know, it's kind of like, I guess, how our relationship works. It's like he will go write his songs, I write my songs, and then we meet somewhere in the middle where it's like, then when he hears my songs, I trust him to tell me what he thinks about my songs. So it's like if he doesn't think it's good enough, or he thinks like, oh, I love how you did that, do more of that, or maybe it's just amazing just the way that it is, don't touch it, you know, like. So I think we've always had that ability, like, to kind of go back and forth with the songs like that.
Now, since I've had my daughter, I've learned that like having like rituals and routines, not like bedtime, although bedtime's a decent example, but like things that we sort of repeatedly do together makes me and her seem to be a little bit more settled or a little bit more open to whatever's going on. Have you found that ritual plays a role in your musical career now, or is your life so moving because you've got double the children that I do, that doesn't work as well?
Do you mean like rituals with my kids?
Yeah, or any kind, really. When I talk to songwriters, I find that some have like these rituals that they do like before they're writing or with their family or with their friends, and some are like, no, I just work when it comes to me, man.
Oh yeah. No, I think it just depends. I definitely feel like I have to be in the right spiritual place to write. Like it just has to, you know, I think when I first had kids, I imagined that like my baby would be sleeping in the studio. I'd be like, I could just keep writing with my kid there and that'll be great. And then I quickly realized that was not going to work like at all. And that I had to kind of separate the two. So
I did that too. When I joined my band, Dear Marcia, my daughter was born and we went into the studio a month later. And I was like, oh, this will be just fine. It's no big deal. I was like, oh God, this doesn't work. Oh no.
yeah, it's a transition for sure. I mean, even now when I'm writing, like my son will just like if he's home from school, he'll just like come slam on my door and be like, Mom, man, like, what do we say, buddy? Like, mommy's in here. Like, you have to stay out there. But, that's what it is.
Well, here's something I've often talked about with people. It's just sort of a funny thing, but it's actually true under the law. And you might want to use this as a legal pro tip here. Under American copyright law, when this is, I'm dead serious with this, Zach. This might actually help solve problems with their kids, right? Under American copyright law, a copyright, including a written song, lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. But if a song or any copywritten work is written with multiple authors, it is the life of the last surviving author plus 70 years. So if you want your copyrights to last for a long time, ZZ, these songs to last forever, make your little kid the co-writer.
Uh-huh.
That's so smart.
There you go. And
are you gonna be like, I told her that when you see
absolutely. So all I'm saying is don't kick your kid out of the room. Have them pitch a lyric. Yeah. And make that copyright last as long as possible.
I'll just be like, don't worry, Ryan. He's taking out of my side. It's not gonna.
Our guest, that'd be funny. Like you write with a third writer, and you're like, oh no, my kid gets a third.
Yeah. Don't worry, it's coming out of my side.
Yeah. Our guest has been ZZ Ward. Her fourth studio album, Liberation, drops on March 14th, which by the time you listen to this means you might already get to enjoy it. So go out and enjoy this awesome album. Our guest is touring the U.S. throughout March and April. You can find out more about her work by visiting zzward.com. ZZ, this has been an absolute treat, as it is every time you join us. Before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Yeah, I mean, so many tips. But I guess if I was just going to say a couple, I think that I just think about how I got to where I am now, and you just have to be relentless. And there's a lot of artists that I know that are like that. You just have to be relentless. There's going to be a lot of doors that just close in your face. And you just have to hear that little voice in your head that says, keep going. And you will find people that believe in you and your music if you really, really put the time in and get good at your craft, and just, stay off TikTok or maybe get on TikTok, but get good at something. Just get good at something. I think that I don't even know how kids are going to get good at being musicians anymore if they're always on their phones. But when you do get good at something, then you can just blow up on TikTok. So it just has to be the right time.
I love it. From ZZ Ward, the secret to music industry success is either to stay off of TikTok or get on it. One of the two. Yeah. ZZ, you're awesome. We wish you nothing but the best. You bring us so much great insight. And again, you had your choice of so many podcasts and you joined us here the day before your album. I can't tell you how much that means to us. We've had a blast. My thanks to you. Thanks to Zach Sloan and producer Lauren. And my thanks to all of our viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.
Mistakes.